One of Picasso's most well-known paintings, Guernica, was created in response to the Guernica bombings on April 26, 1937. Guernica is a small, quiet Basque country town in northern Spain. In 1937, during the Spanish Civil War, Guernica was considered to be the northern center of the resistance to the Spain nationalists. In April, while most of the men of Guernica were away fighting in the Civil War, the town was bombed by Nazi Germany and Fascist Italy upon request from the Spain nationalists. With mostly women and children left in the town to suffer, and with little to no strategic significance to the Civil War, many were horrified by this event, including Picasso. Picasso's Guernica painting helped shed light on this horrific event, as well as the Spanish Civil War as a whole, and it would become a strong anti-war symbol for years to come. A deeper look into this painting unveils powerful symbolism and emotion that should help us all consider the horrors of war. It is first important to note that this painting is large, 11 feet 5 inches tall by 25.5 feet long. When you stand in front of this piece, it is hard not to be drawn in. You are compelled to look at the shapes, the characters, and the symbolism. It's almost as if the painting wraps around you, completely drawing you in, with no escape in sight. The colors Picasso chose, black, white, and gray, give this painting a very sobering feeling. It's very dark, it's very somber. But at the same time, it's meant to represent the black and white print of the newspapers. Picasso learned of the Guernica bombings through the newspapers and wanted to use that media as a way to further share this idea with the world in ways that newspapers just couldn't. At first glance, this piece looks like a cubist painting, something that Picasso is well known for. He breaks up shapes and angles and characters in odd ways to help you see it from multiple vantage points. But Picasso actually called this a surrealist painting, a piece that would bring about symbolism, emotions, and thoughts and feelings from an unconscious mind. Today, this piece is considered to be both cubist and surrealist. So let's look at this piece as a whole before we dive in. Looking at it all together, you can see that Picasso has separated it into 3 sections. You have a grouping of figures on the left, one in the center, and one off to the right. Now this is to reference a triptych, which is a holy Christian altarpiece. This isn't necessarily a Christian piece of art, but altarpieces are there to help you think deeply about things, to ponder. It's something to be worshipped. And it also is a reminder of a sacrifice that was made. So you can see the idea that Picasso was trying to make here as he was connecting this idea of a triptych with this horrific event of the bombing of Guernica. Now you'll begin to notice that your eye starts to wander around this piece. It's very chaotic and you're not quite sure where to stop and look. This is on purpose. It's because of these formal elements that Picasso uses. The shapes, they're sharp, they're angular, there's no center to the piece. You can see that there are strong diagonal lines that start from the top of the piece and create this triangular shape. It's very chaotic, which I'm sure we can imagine the event was chaotic in and of itself. The other thing that I want to mention with form is it feels very flat and two-dimensional. But as you begin to look deeper, you can see these shapes actually start to take a 3-dimensional form. There's substance here and depth in this piece. This could be symbolic of the meaning that lies beneath your initial glance at the piece called Guernica. Now let's dive into the figures and the symbolism contained within Guernica. There are a lot of different interpretations to the figures and the painting, the symbolism, and I'm not going to cover them all. So I want to hear from you. What are some of the pieces of symbolism that you like that I didn't mention? Or just feel free to comment the things that speak most to you about this piece. All right, let's begin. Moving from left to right, let's first focus on that bowl. Now, bowls symbolize wealth and abundance, as well as brutality and darkness. With that in mind, It's generally believed that the bull represents the Spain nationalists, or more specifically, the nationalist leader himself, Francisco Franco, a symbol of wealth and brutality. The woman and child underneath the bull likely represent the women and children who suffered from the Guernica bombings. In general, the woman and child could symbolize the many innocent people who suffer from the horrors of war. The image of a mother holding a deceased child is called the Pietà. It's usually connected with the Virgin Mary holding her deceased son Christ. The idea of a Pietà is to show the grief of a mother losing a child, the loss of innocence, but also the strength of motherhood. Next, you'll notice the dismembered man in the bottom left of the painting. He looks as if he has fallen off the horse above him in a symbolic gesture of the fall of Spain. The star palm on one of his hands represents sacrifice or innocence, wrongful death. The broken sword grasped by the other hand may represent the defenselessness and defeat of those in war. You'll also notice the small, faint white poppy flower in his hand, a faint yet brief message of peace to come. Above the dismembered figure, you'll also find the very faint outline of a dove, another symbol of hope and peace, but very faint in comparison to the horrors of war that often make hope and peace seem like a distant fantasy. Shifting our focus to the center of the piece, you'll see a light bulb above and to the right of the dove. It emanates light and is in the shape of an eye. Many believe this to be the eye of God looking down on war, because traditionally when we see one light lit, it represents God's there. But because this eye is also a light bulb, it's often interpreted to symbolize technology as the new God. And what can technology do that God cannot? It could also represent the technology that has made this war possible and even more horrific over time. Below the eye is a horse. It looks as if he's screaming towards the bull with his sharp knife-like tongue sticking out. The horse is often thought to represent the Republicans or people of Guernica in the Spanish Civil War. More generally, it represents those who suffer in war. There's a gaping wound where he's stabbed in the side with a spear of some sort, and is indicative of the pain suffered in war. This often is also tied to the crucifixion of Christ, where he was stabbed in the side with a spear as well. Moving to the right of the piece and near the horse, you can see a lamp that's being held out by a woman flying in through some sort of window. This lamp is at the top of the triangle base that creates the chaos in the middle of the Guernica painting. Over by the woman's head, off to the right, you'll find a 5-pronged symbol with 2 semicircles. Many believe this to symbolize the communist star, sickle, and hammer found on the Soviet Union flag. This woman could represent Russia, an enemy to Germany at the time, and a potential ally or hope for the Guernica people. She seems to be frantically searching for something as she looks through the chaos for something she has lost. The 3 women on the right, the one who could represent Russia, the one looking towards the lamp, and the one being engulfed in the flames of war, have a few potential meanings. One could be that they symbolize the 3 fates of Roman and Greek mythology that controlled life and death. Another interpretation is that they represent the 3 martyred virgins of Christianity. Or perhaps they are just 3 separate women that don't have any strong symbolized connection. I do want to point out here that there's the woman at the bottom who is completely naked. Nakedness could be a symbol of humiliation, but it also feels very innocent, this feeling of being caught off guard. Regardless of the meaning of these 3 women, they evoke the feelings of fear, pain, horror, desperation, and loss. Overall, Picasso's painting Guernica becomes a strong anti-war symbol. It was first exhibited in 1937 in the Paris International Exposition in the Spanish Pavilion. It was shown along with newsreels and video clips of the bombings of Guernica to show the ignorant world what was happening in Picasso's home country of Spain. The piece gained more attention and attraction as it toured throughout Europe in 1938 and 1939. Then, in 1939, when Franco claimed victory over Spain, Picasso's Guernica was sent to the US to help financially support the Spanish refugees there. Eventually, Picasso requested that the piece be housed in the New York Museum of Modern Art. It traveled throughout the US, through Brazil, and Europe again, but it always returned home to the MoMA. During the Vietnam War, the room that housed Guernica actually became a location for a lot of anti-war vigils. The message of the piece continued to remain the same: to warn men not to do this again. Finally, in 1981, Guernica returned home to Spain, years after Franco's death and Spain's transformation to a democratic constitutional monarchy. And you can now view Picasso's Guernica masterpiece at the Museo Reina, Sofía in Madrid, Spain. If you enjoyed this video, please like and comment below with your interpretation of Picasso's Guernica. And for more art history videos, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon off to the side to be notified of new videos that I publish each week. Please join us again, and remember, art just keeps getting better.